If there is ever a tomorrow when we are not together, there is something you must remember. You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Christopher Robin, Winnie the Pooh. From the world-famous author of the Yellow Teddy Bear, Winnie the Pooh, comes this engaging play, The Boy Comes Home. Ellen Alexander Milne was an English author and playwright who belonged to the early 20th century. His friends, rather cricket mates, included J.M. Barrie, author of Peter Pan, Arthur Conan Doyle, author of Sherlock Holmes, and P.G. Wodehouse, author of Jeeves. Milne participated in both the world wars, and his experiences at the war front evolved in many of the stories that came from his pen. The play we bring to you today, The Boy Comes Home, is set in the backdrop of World War I and explores the changes in people and perspectives after the war. A boy who returns from the war front 4 years after the war. Should there be a change in him? Should his family's expectations of him change? The Department of English, CMS College Kottayam, proudly brings to you Ellen Alexander Milne's The Boy Comes Home.
Our play, The Boy Comes Home, opens to Mr. James's house, where young Philip is sitting for breakfast. Who is Philip? He is a young man of 23, a British soldier. He has just returned from a war after 4 years. Philip is a carefree young man who is close to his aunt Emily, but is uncomfortable in the company of his guardian, Mr. James. Philip finds himself in conflict with James's strict behavior and his unbending rules. We see Aunt Emily, an amiable lady, Mrs. Higgins, a domineering cook, Uncle James, and Mary, a parlour maid. Now, the play opens into Mr. James's house, which is furnished in mid-Victorian style. Philip enters into the room.
Did you ring, Master Philip?
Yes, I want some breakfast. Please, Mary.
Breakfast has been cleared away an hour ago.
Exactly, that's why I rang. You can boil me a couple of eggs or something. And coffee, not tea.
I'm sure I don't know what Mrs. Higgins will say.
Who is Mrs. Higgins?
The cook. And she's not used to being put about like this.
Do you think she'll say something?
I don't know what she'll say.
You needn't tell me if you don't want to. I don't think it will shock me. One gets used to it in the army.
Well, I'll do what I can, sir. But breakfast at 8 sharp is the master's rule. Just as it used to be before you went away to the war.
Before I went away to the war, I did a lot of silly things. Don't drag them up now. 2 eggs and a ham.
I'm sure I don't know what Mrs. Higgins will say.
Oh, there you are, Philip. How are you? Did you sleep
Rather
well?
splendidly. How are you, Aunt Emily?
And did you have a good breakfast? Naughty boy to be late for it. I always thought they got up so early in the army.
They do. That's why they are so late when they're out of the army.
I expect a habit of 4 years would have stayed with you.
Every morning for 4 years, as I have shot out of bed, I told myself, wait, a time will come.
I dare say you wanted your sleep out. I was so afraid a really cozy bed would have kept you awake after all those years in the trenches.
Well, one isn't in the trenches all the time. One gets leave if one's an officer.
You didn't spend much of it with us, Philip.
I know. But you do understand, don't you, dear?
I think your Uncle James felt it. After all, you've been living with us for quite some years, and Uncle James is your guardian.
I know. You've been a darling to me always, Aunt Emily. But Uncle James and I.
Yes, he is a little difficult to get along with. I'm more used to him, but Uncle James is really fond of you.
I'm so used to be frightened of him. I suppose he's just the same. He looked the same yesterday, and he still has breakfast at 8 o'clock.
Mrs. Higgins wishes to speak to you, ma'am.
Yes, I'll
Tell
come.
Mrs. Higgins to come here. At once, Mary.
Dear Philip, I don't know what Mrs. Higgins will say.
No, nobody seems to. I thought we'll find out for once.
Perhaps I'd better
No,
go.
you shouldn't. You know, she really wants to see me.
You?
Yes, I ordered breakfast 5 minutes ago.
Philip, my dear boy, you could have told me. I would have got breakfast for you. Though I don't know what
You
Mrs.
sent for me, ma'am.
I sent for you, Mrs. Higgins. I want some breakfast. Didn't Mary tell you?
Breakfast? Breakfast is at 8 o'clock. And it always has been as long as I've been in this house. And always will be until I get further orders.
Well, you just got further orders. 2 eggs and a ham.
Orders? We're talking about orders? From whom in this house do I take orders, may I ask?
In this case, from me.
In that case, ma'am, I would like to give you a month's notice from today.
Certainly. We can easily arrange that. I think you'll prefer it if my aunt gave you notice now, and you can leave at once. How much do you pay her, Aunt Emily?
45 pounds.
12 into 45. I hope you don't mind a Cox check. Some people do. But this is a good one. Here you are.
What's this?
Your wages instead of notice. You can leave at once.
Who said anything about going?
I'm sorry. I thought you did.
Well, if it's only a bit of breakfast, I don't mind getting for you if I'm as decent.
I'll say it again. 2 eggs and a ham. And Mary can bring the ham at once.
Oh, well.
Is it all that she ever says? It isn't much to worry about.
Philip, how could you? I would have been terrified.
It's not just about breakfast, but changes. Changes in people, in relations. The World War brought it all. Changes in families like that of James, for instance. James, Philip's uncle, is a man who assumes great power, whose severity passes for strength with the weak. He downplays the notion of the war and is dismissive about his nephew's contribution to it, though he takes great pride in his own sacrifices towards it. He boasts of the excess profit tax he had to pay during the war. Despite the misfortunes he claims on himself, he is one among the few who greatly profited from the jam business during the war. What follows is a conversation between James and Emily. Aunt Emily wanders around the room, putting a few things tidy as is her habit, when she is interrupted by the entrance of Uncle James.
Philip down yet?
He's just having his breakfast.
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. I said 10 o'clock, Emily.
Yes, dear, I heard you.
And you don't say anything.
I expect he's tired after that long war.
That's no excuse for not being punctual. I think he learned punctuality in the army.
I expect he learnt it, James, but I understood him to say that he'd forgotten it.
Then the sooner he learns it, the better. I particularly stayed away from the office today in order to talk things out to him. And it's 10 past 10 and no sign of him. I am practically throwing away the day.
What are you going to talk to him about?
His future, naturally. I have decided the best thing for him is to come into the business at once.
Are you really going to talk it over with him, James? Or are you just going to tell him that he must come?
What do you mean? What's the difference? Naturally, we will talk it over first, and naturally, he will fall in with my wishes.
I suppose he can hardly help himself. Poor boy.
Not until he is 25, anyhow. When he is 25, he'll come into his own money and do what he likes with it.
I think you ought to consult him a little, dear. After all, he has been fighting for us.
Now, that's the sort of silly sentiment there has been much too much of. I object to it strongly. I don't want to boast, but I think I have done my share. I gave up my nephew to the country. And I think I have told you before, this excess profits tax is a singularly stupid piece of legislation. But I paid it. And I don't go boasting about how much I paid.
I think Philip's 4 years out there have made him much more of a man. He somehow doesn't seem like the little boy who had to be told what to do. I'm sure they've taught him something.
Of course, they taught him something about bombs or which end of the revolver should go off. But I don't think that's going to help him in finding a suitable career in these after-war conditions.
I'm sure you'll find him different.
I didn't notice any particular difference last night.
I expect you'll find him rather more.
Of course, if he wants to earn his living any other way, he may. But I don't see how he proposes to do so long as I hold the purse strings. You'd better tell him I can't wait any longer.
Philip, your uncle is waiting to see you before he goes to the office. Will you be long, dear?
Is he in a hurry?
Yes.
He says he is, rather, dear.
Couldn't he come and talk in here? It wouldn't interfere with my breakfast.
No.
He'd rather you came to him, darling.
Oh, well.
He'll be here directly, dear. You sit down, and make yourself comfortable with the paper. He'll be down soon.
The morning is not the time to make oneself comfortable. It's the most dangerous habit. I nearly found myself dropping off in front of the fire. I don't like this hanging about wasting the day.
You have a nice little sleep, dear. Remember, we were up late last night listening to Philip's stories.
Yes. You must not neglect your duties, Emily. I have no doubt you have plenty to do.
Yes, I'll leave you, but please don't be hard on the poor boy.
I'll be just, Emily. You can rely upon that.
That's not quite what I meant.
the strict and stern Uncle James. Would he understand Philip? Understand the changes in Philip after the war? Is Philip to him the same irresponsible boy who left for the war 4 years ago? What he is about to realize is that Philip has changed much. His experiences at Somme in France, where he was in command of the company, the decisions that he needed to make, his near-death experiences, all change him. What we are about to see next is a carefully crafted part of the play. James waits in the living room for Philip, who is still enjoying his breakfast. James begins to nod. He wakes up with a start, turns over the paper, and nods again. Soon, he is breathing deeply with closed eyes.
You wanted to see me, Uncle James? I'm sorry. I was a bit late for breakfast.
A bit late? I make it just 2 hours.
All right, Uncle James. Call it 2 hours late or 22 hours early for tomorrow's breakfast.
You smoke now?
I what?
You smoke.
Good heavens. What did you think we did in France?
Before you start smoking all over the house, I should have thought you would have asked your aunt's permission.
Aunt Emily, do you mind me smoking in here?
Of course not, darling.
Of course not, darling.
Now, understand once and for all, Philip. While you remain in my house, I expect not only punctuality, but also civility and respect. I will not have impertinence.
Well, that's what I want to talk to you about. Staying in your house, I mean.
I don't know what you do mean.
Well, we don't get on well together. I thought I'll take room somewhere. Maybe you can give me some allowance until I came upon my money. Or you could give me the money right now if you really like. I don't quite know how father left it for me.
You will come into your money when you are 25. Your father very wisely thought that to trust a large sum on a mere boy of 21 was simply putting temptation in his way. Whether I have the power or not to alter his dispositions, I do not propose to do so.
Well, if it comes to that, I am 25.
Indeed, I had the impression that that incident took place in about 2 years' time. When did you really become 25, may I ask?
It was in a trench in Somme. We were attacking the next day. A damned rotten place. We got hell. We lost many men. Billy. Poor old Billy. They got him. Poor devil, they got him. That left me, the commander. We were stuck in the trench. And the men I sent never came back. It was murder. So I had to decide. We lost about half the company by this time. There were 3 things I could do. Hang on, go back and explain, or move to this other trench against orders. And I moved back to this other trench against orders. That's when I became 25, 35, or 45.
Yes. Points like that do frequently crop up in the trenches, and I'm glad that you did well out there. But when it comes to choosing a career, my advice is not altogether to be despised. Your father evidently thought it so, or he would not have entrusted
My
you to
father
my care.
didn't foresee this war.
Yes, but you make too much of this war. You young people think that you have come back from France in order to teach us our business. But I think it is you who will have to learn, not me.
I'm quite prepared to learn. In fact, I really want to.
Excellent. Then we'll consider that matter settled.
Well, we haven't settled on what business I'm going to learn.
I don't think that's very difficult. I propose to take you into my business. You will start at the bottom, of course, but it will be a splendid opening for you.
I see. So you've decided it for me? The jam business?
Is there anything to be ashamed about that?
Oh no, nothing at all. Only it doesn't happen to appeal to me.
I think you have something else in your mind.
I had an idea to be an architect.
An architect? You propose to start learning to be an architect at 23?
Well, I couldn't start before, could I?
Exactly. And now you will understand you are too late.
Is it? Aren't there going to be any more architects or doctors or solicitors? Just because we've lost 4 years, are all the professions going to die out?
And how long do you think it will be before you start earning money as an architect?
The usual time, whatever it may be. If I am 4 years behind, so is everybody else.
Well, I think it's high time you started earning a living at once.
Look here, Uncle James. Do you really think you can treat me like a boy who has just left school? Do you think 4 years at the war front has made no difference at all?
If there had been any difference, I should have expected an increased readiness to obey orders and recognize authority.
You're evidently determined to have a row. Perhaps I better tell you once and for all, I refuse to join the turnip and vegetable marrow business.
And perhaps I'd better tell you, sir, once and for all, that I will not allow rudeness from an impertinent young puppy.
I remember annoying a brigadier once. He was covered with red, had a red face, about 20 medals, and a cold blue eye. He told me how angry he was at me, while I stood to attention for 5 minutes. I'm afraid, Uncle James, you aren't nearly that impressive.
Oh. Fortunately, I have other means of impressing you. The power of the purse goes a long way in this world. I propose to use it.
I see. That's rather awkward, isn't it?
I think you will find it very awkward.
I suppose I shall have to think of another argument. Ha!
What on earth are you doing?
Souvenir from France. Do you know, Uncle James, that this revolver has killed about 20 Germans?
Well, don't go playing with it here, or you'd be killing Englishmen before you know where you are.
Well, you never know. It's a nice little weapon.
Put it down, sir. You ought to have grown out of such monkey tricks. That's the way accidents do happen.
Not when you've been on a revolver course and you know all about it. Besides, it is loaded.
Put it down at once, sir. Have you gone mad suddenly?
Well, I thought you would be interested in it.
I don't know what the object of this tomfoolery is, if it has one. But understand that I expect you to join me tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Kindly see that you are punctual.
Uncle James.
I have...
Damn it, sir! You'll stand to attention when you speak to an officer. That's good. You may sit down. Sit down!
What does this bluff mean?
It isn't bluff. It's quite serious.
Threats?
Persuasion.
You're going to shoot your old uncle.
Why not? I shot lots of old uncles. This is going to be the purest accident. Can't you see it in the newspaper? The nephew who killed his uncle.
Put that back at once.
How about this? You hold it in the right hand to keep the liver down. Perhaps this doesn't interest.
Put it down at once, sir.
All right, then let's talk business.
What do you want?
All I ask from you is that you should be reasonable.
And if I refuse, you will shoot me.
I don't quite know. You haven't enjoyed this, have you? Fear, it's a horrible thing. Elderly men die of it sometimes. 1, 2,
Philip! Mercy! What are your terms?
good man. That's the way to talk. Make yourself comfortable. Sit. Here's your paper.
Fear is a horrible thing. Indeed, it is a horrible thing, and it is this fear that transforms Uncle James. His conservatism and the obsession with the ideals like punctuality and discipline diminish as a result of fear. From an authoritarian, oppressive, and stubborn personality, James gradually evolves into a person who is ready to listen. His ego crumbles at the gunpoint. What happened in the previous episode could also happen here. Watch closely.
You wanted to see me, Uncle James?
That's all right, my boy. That's all right. That's all right. What have you been doing?
Breakfast? Rather late.
That's all right.
Anything the matter with you? You don't seem your usual bright self.
I seem to have dropped asleep in front of the fire. Most unusual for me to have done. Most unusual.
Let that be a lesson to you not to get up so early. Well, if you're in the army, one can't help yourself. Thank heavens I'm out of it and my own master again.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Philip. Come, sit down.
No, it's okay. I'll be right here.
No, you sit down. I'd rather be dropping off again.
All right.
You smoked a lot in France?
Rather, nothing much to do there. It's allowed in here?
Yes, it's okay. Now, Philip, what are you going to do now? Now that you have left the army?
Burn my uniform and sell my revolver.
Sell your revolver?
Well, I don't want it now, do I?
Oh, no, most certainly not. You are in England now. No need for revolvers here.
Well, I hope not.
Quite so. Well now, Philip, what next? We must find a profession for you.
I suppose so. I haven't really thought about it much.
You never wanted to be an architect?
An architect?
Or anything like that?
It's a bit late, isn't it?
Well, if you are 4 years behind, so is everybody else.
To tell you the truth, I don't mind much anyway. Anything you like, except a commissioner. I absolutely refuse to wear a uniform again.
How would you like to come into the business?
The jam business? You don't want me to salute you in the mornings?
My dear boy, no.
All right, I'll try it if you like. I don't think I shall be any good. What should I do?
It's your experience in managing and handling men that will be of value.
I can do that all right. Uncle James, do you realize that I'm never going to wear a uniform again? Or salute men? Or check men's feet? And best of all, I'm never going to be frightened again. Have you really known what it is to be afraid? Really afraid? No. Not really afraid of death. Thank God it's over now. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in the British Museum and be happy.
All right. We'll try you in the office. I expect you want a holiday first, though.
My dear uncle, this is holiday. Being in London is holiday. Buying an evening newspaper, running after a bus, wearing a waistcoat. It's all holiday.
All right. Come with me to the office now. I will introduce you to Mr. Bamford.
Right. Who's he?
Our manager. A little stiff, but a good fellow though. He'll be happy to have you in the firm.
Perhaps I'll bring my revolver in case he isn't.
A good joke. A good joke, that. But only a joke, of course.
Was it a dream or wasn't it? We'll never be quite certain. The timid boy Philip, who left for war, has now returned with a new understanding of power and persuasion. 4 years later, at Philip's return, we see a change in the household power dynamics. Mary is startled. Mrs. Higgins is subdued. Aunt Emily is surprised and Uncle James is shattered. Here is a play that slips between light and shadow, addressing multiplicities. There is dominance and resistance. There is chaos and order. There is conflict and resolution. The boy has come home.